Good evening. Tonight we leave behind the noise of the modern world and travel back nearly 2,000 years to the heart of the greatest empire the ancient world had ever known. Close your eyes. Imagine cool stone streets beneath your feet, the soft glow of oil lamps dancing against marble walls, the distant sound of sandals echoing through empty streets, and above everything, the quiet stars watching over ancient Rome. Tonight's story follows an ordinary man. Not an emperor, not a famous general, not a senator remembered by history, just one simple night watchman, whose name has long been forgotten. His name was Marcus. He was 43 years old. His beard had begun turning gray. Years of walking the city had slowed his steps, but they had also filled his eyes with quiet wisdom. Every evening, just before sunset, Marcus left his small apartment near the Aventine Hill. He kissed his wife. He smiled at his sleeping daughter. Then he picked up a wooden lantern, a short spear, and began another peaceful night protecting Rome. His job was simple: walk, watch, listen, nothing more. Yet every street held another story. The Roman Forum looked completely different after sunset. During the day, it was crowded with merchants, politicians, philosophers, and travelers from every corner of the empire. At night, silence returned. The great temples rested beneath the moon. Massive columns cast long shadows across smooth stone roads. Even the statues seemed asleep. Marcus walked slowly between them. His sandals made soft tapping sounds against the ancient pavement. He enjoyed these quiet hours. Rome belonged to everyone during daylight, but after dark, it belonged only to the stars. Sometimes he stopped beside a fountain. Fresh mountain water flowed endlessly through carved stone basins. He listened to the gentle sound of water. The Romans had built magnificent aqueducts. They carried fresh water from distant hills across dozens of miles. Even at midnight, the city continued to breathe. Water flowed. Fountains whispered. The empire never truly slept. Marcus often wondered how many people had walked these same roads before him. Legionaries returning from distant wars, merchants carrying silk from the east, children racing home before sunset, old philosophers debating beneath marble arches. Every footprint disappeared. Only the stones remembered. Near midnight, Marcus climbed the gentle slope toward the Capitoline Hill. From there, the entire city stretched beneath him. Thousands of rooftops, hundreds of temples, markets, bathhouses, gardens, smoke drifting slowly into the cool night air. Far away, dogs barked softly. An owl called once, then silence returned. Rome was enormous. Nearly 1 million people lived inside its walls. For the ancient world, it was almost unimaginable. Yet tonight, almost everyone slept peacefully. Behind every window, someone dreamed. Perhaps of tomorrow's market, perhaps of distant family, perhaps of victories, or simple happiness. Marcus continued walking. His lantern swayed gently beside him. Golden light moved across white marble. Sometimes cats crossed the road. Sometimes he passed another watchman. They nodded quietly. No words were needed. The night understood silence. Before dawn, Marcus visited the great public baths. They were empty now. Only echoes remained. During the day, thousands gathered here. Rich, poor, soldiers, senators, children. Bathing was not simply cleaning. It was conversation, friendship, business, life itself. Now, only moonlight reflected across still pools. Marcus smiled. He imagined tomorrow. The laughter would return. Steam would fill the rooms. Voices would echo beneath high ceilings. But tonight, everything rested. Even great cities need sleep. As he continued walking, gentle wind carried the scent of olive trees growing beyond the city walls. Somewhere nearby, fresh bread was already baking. Roman bakers woke long before sunrise. Soon, the markets would awaken. Farmers would arrive with vegetables, fishermen with fresh catches, potters, blacksmiths, writers, teachers. Life would begin again. Marcus reached one of Rome's mighty gates. Outside stretched endless roads, stone roads built by Roman engineers, straight roads, strong roads, roads connecting continents, from Britain to Egypt, from Spain to Syria. thousands of miles. Each road carried countless stories, travelers, letters, dreams, hope. The stars slowly faded. A pale blue light appeared above the eastern horizon. Birds began singing. One by one, then together. Morning had arrived. Marcus had finished another peaceful night. No battles, no glory, no monuments. Only quiet service. Sometimes, history belongs not to emperors, but to ordinary people who simply did their work well. Marcus returned home. His daughter was just waking. She smiled sleepily. His wife prepared warm bread and honey. Outside, Rome awakened. Inside, peace remained. Marcus removed his sandals, placed his lantern beside the door, and finally rested, perhaps dreaming of the same quiet streets he had guarded all night beneath the stars. Centuries passed. Empires rose. Empires fell. Temples became ruins. Marble cracked beneath rain and time. The names of countless ordinary Romans disappeared forever. But somewhere beneath today's modern city, those ancient stone streets still remain, silent, patient, remembering every step, perhaps even the gentle footsteps of Marcus. As our journey through ancient Rome comes to an end, allow your breathing to slow. Imagine the quiet streets fading into soft morning light, the fountains still flowing, the lantern growing dim, the city peacefully waking, and the old watchman finally asleep. Thank you for joining this peaceful journey through history. Sleep well, and may your dreams wander gently through the timeless streets of ancient Rome. Good night. The deeper Marcus walked into the sleeping city, the quieter the world became. Behind the grand marble temples, beyond the busy marketplaces, far away from the homes of senators and merchants, there existed another Rome, a Rome that most citizens rarely visited. Its streets were narrow, its buildings were older, its stones had been worn smooth by thousands of years of footsteps. The air felt cooler here. Only the gentle sound of the wind moved between the ancient walls. Marcus lifted his lantern a little higher. Its warm golden light danced across cracked marble columns and weathered brick walls. Every shadow seemed to carry a memory. Every doorway looked as though it had once welcomed someone home. These forgotten streets had no crowds anymore. No laughter. No merchants calling for customers. No children running through the alleys. Only silence. Peaceful, endless silence. Marcus had walked these roads for nearly 20 years. Yet each night they felt different. The city never truly repeated itself. Sometimes moonlight revealed carvings that had gone unnoticed for decades. Sometimes ivy climbed a wall that had stood untouched for centuries. Sometimes a small flower pushed through a crack in the ancient stones. Nature, patiently reclaiming Rome. He smiled softly. Even empires, he thought, eventually belonged to time. Soon Marcus reached a tiny shrine hidden between two aging buildings. It was easy to miss during the day. A simple stone altar, a weathered statue, several old oil lamps. Someone had placed fresh olive branches there earlier that evening. Perhaps an elderly widow, perhaps a traveler asking for safe passage. Perhaps someone simply hoping tomorrow would be kinder than today. Marcus never asked. The shrine belonged to quiet prayers, and quiet prayers deserved quiet respect. He lowered his head for a moment, not to worship, only to acknowledge the countless people who had stood in that exact place before him. Thousands of unknown Romans, each carrying hopes, fears, dreams. Many of their names had disappeared from history, but for a brief moment, Marcus remembered them. His footsteps continued. The narrow streets twisted gently through neighborhoods forgotten even by many mapmakers. Old fountains still whispered with flowing water. Tiny courtyards rested beneath fig trees. Cats slept comfortably on warm stone walls. An owl watched silently from the roof of an abandoned villa. Nothing hurried. Nothing demanded attention. The city simply breathed, slowly, calmly, like someone peacefully asleep. Far above, the stars remained unchanged. The same stars had watched over Julius Caesar. The same stars had watched Roman soldiers leave for distant lands. The same stars had watched countless families gather for evening meals before returning to sleep. Marcus often wondered how many generations had looked toward the heavens with the very same questions. Who came before us? Who will come after us? Will anyone remember our names? The lantern flickered gently. Its small flame reminded him how fragile every human life truly was. Brief, warm, beautiful, then quietly gone. Yet the city remained. Stone after stone, street after street, century after century. Marcus continued walking into the hidden heart of ancient Rome, where history had not disappeared. It had simply become quiet, and tonight, only the Watchman remained awake enough to hear it whisper. Beautiful, then quietly gone. Yet the city remained. Stone after stone, street after street, century after century. Marcus continued walking into the hidden heart of ancient Rome, where history had not disappeared. It had simply become quiet, and tonight, only the Watchman remained awake enough to hear it whisper. Before we leave these quiet streets, take one last look around. Imagine the cool night air resting upon the ancient stones. Imagine the soft glow of hundreds of oil lamps shining behind wooden windows, while families sleep peacefully inside their homes, unaware of the silent watch unfolding outside. For Marcus, this was never a journey of glory. No cheering crowds would celebrate his work. No historian would carve his name into marble. His reward was something much simpler, a city that welcomed another peaceful sunrise. Every worn cobblestone beneath his feet carried the weight of countless generations. Merchants, soldiers, philosophers, craftsmen, children, and travelers had all walked these same streets, leaving behind stories that slowly disappeared into time. Yet the streets remembered, the walls remembered. Even the quiet fountains seemed to whisper fragments of lives long forgotten. History is often told through emperors, battles, and magnificent monuments. But the true heartbeat of ancient Rome lived in ordinary people like Marcus. The men and women who quietly protected, built, cleaned, baked, carried water, lit the lamps, and kept the eternal city alive every single day. As the morning sun rises higher, the mysteries of the night slowly fade away. The hidden alleys fill with footsteps. The marketplaces awaken. Children begin to laugh. The smell of fresh bread drifts through the air, and another ordinary day begins. Marcus quietly closes his door, knowing that when evening returns, he will once again walk these ancient streets beneath the moon. Because while cities may sleep, someone must always remain awake. And perhaps, somewhere among the silent stones of ancient Rome, his gentle footsteps can still be heard, carried softly by the wind across the eternal city. Marcus walks toward the heart of sleeping Rome. The night had now reached its quietest hour. Most of ancient Rome had fallen into a deep and peaceful sleep. The sounds of the busy city had long disappeared, replaced by the gentle whisper of the wind moving through marble streets and towering columns. Marcus continued his slow patrol. His lantern cast a warm circle of light across the ancient stones, revealing details that daylight often hid. Every crack in the pavement, every weathered statue, and every faded inscription carried the memory of countless generations. He paused beneath a towering archway built decades before he was born. Roman engineers had designed these structures to endure the passing of time, and even now they stood with quiet confidence beneath the moon. Marcus gently rested his hand against the cool stone. He wondered how many other watchmen had stood in exactly the same place. Perhaps hundreds, perhaps thousands. The city remembered them all, even if history did not. Continuing forward, he entered a peaceful residential district, where wealthy Roman families slept behind beautifully decorated walls. Colorful frescoes covered the plaster walls of elegant homes. Small gardens filled with olive trees and fragrant herbs rested behind wooden gates. Tiny oil lamps flickered softly inside a few windows, their warm glow creating a comforting contrast against the cool silver light of the moon. Not every citizen of Rome dreamed of power or glory. Many simply wished for another peaceful sunrise. Marcus understood that better than anyone. His footsteps echoed gently through an empty colonnade lined with magnificent marble pillars. Above him, the stars shone with remarkable clarity. Without the noise and smoke of the daytime city, the heavens seemed endless. Roman sailors often navigated by these same stars. Travelers trusted them. Farmers planted crops beneath them. Philosophers searched for meaning within them. And tonight, they quietly watched over Marcus as he watched over Rome. Soon he reached a small neighborhood bakery. The heavy wooden doors remained closed, but the faint scent of grain and yesterday's bread still lingered in the cool night air. In only a few hours, bakers would light their ovens. Fresh loaves would fill these streets with warmth and life. For now, however, silence remained the city's greatest companion. A gentle breeze carried the distant sound of flowing water. Marcus followed it until he arrived at a quiet public fountain. The clear water spilled endlessly from carefully carved marble faces into a circular basin polished smooth by countless hands over many generations. He knelt for a moment. Scooping cool water into his hands, he drank slowly. The refreshing taste reminded him how precious simple things could be. Clean water, fresh air, a peaceful night. These quiet blessings often passed unnoticed by those who enjoyed them every day. As Marcus stood once again, a pair of white owls glided silently across the moonlit sky before disappearing beyond the rooftops. Their wings made almost no sound. Only the gentle rustling of olive branches marked their passing. The city remained perfectly calm. No alarms, no shouting, no hurried footsteps. Only the comforting rhythm of a city resting beneath the stars. Marcus smiled softly. Another peaceful hour had passed. Marcus remained still for a few quiet moments within the great library. The silence was unlike any other place in the city. It was not an empty silence. It was filled with invisible voices. Every scroll resting upon the wooden shelves held the thoughts of someone who had lived long before this peaceful night. Some wrote about distant lands beyond the Mediterranean Sea. Others described the stars above Rome, the changing seasons, or the wisdom of philosophers whose words continued to shape generations. Marcus could not read every scroll. That was never his purpose. His duty was much simpler, to protect the city while its knowledge slept. As he slowly turned away, the soft light of his lantern danced across rows of carefully arranged papyrus scrolls. For a brief moment, it almost seemed as though the marble statues were quietly watching him pass. Outside, the cool night air welcomed him once again. The streets remained peaceful. The sound of the fountain in the distance mixed gently with the whisper of leaves moving through the olive trees. Far above, the moon had begun its slow journey toward the western horizon. Dawn was still some time away, but the first hint of morning felt just a little closer. Marcus adjusted his lantern and continued his gentle walk through the eternal city. Another quiet street waited ahead, another forgotten corner, another story resting peacefully beneath the stars. And as long as the night remained calm, Rome would continue to dream in perfect silence. Marcus stopped. For just a moment, he said nothing. The city said nothing. Only the gentle sound of water, flowing through an ancient marble fountain, broke the silence. A cool breeze moved softly between the towering columns. The flame inside his lantern flickered gently, casting warm light across the old stone road. He looked toward the sky. Thousands of stars shone above the eternal city. They had watched over Rome for centuries, long before Marcus, long before the emperors, long before anyone could remember. He took one slow breath, then another. Without rushing, he continued walking, one quiet step after another, through the peaceful streets of ancient Rome. The last hours before dawn, Marcus continued his journey without haste. There was no need to hurry. The night still belonged to silence. The streets ahead became narrower. Ancient stone walls rose quietly on either side. Their rough surfaces had been touched by centuries of wind, rain, and sunlight. Tonight, they rested beneath the gentle glow of the moon. Marcus lifted his lantern just a little higher. The warm flame revealed faded frescoes painted long ago. Small fragments of red, blue, and gold still clung to the old plaster. Time had not erased them completely. It had only softened their beauty. Somewhere nearby, water dripped slowly into a forgotten stone basin. One drop after another. A quiet rhythm that had perhaps continued for generations. Marcus listened for a moment. Then he smiled. Even silence had its own music. ... A narrow passage opened before him. At its end, a tiny courtyard appeared beneath the moon. An ancient olive tree stood proudly at its center. Its twisted trunk looked older than many buildings around it. Its branches reached gently toward the stars. Marcus stopped beneath its shade. He placed one hand against the rough bark. It felt cool, strong, timeless. How many nights had this tree witnessed? How many children had once played beneath it? How many families had gathered here, sharing bread, stories, and laughter? The tree kept every memory. Without speaking, a soft breeze moved through the leaves. The branches answered with a quiet whisper. For a brief moment, It almost sounded like voices from another age. Not frightening, only peaceful, as though ancient Rome itself were breathing, slowly, in its sleep. Marcus continued onward. His footsteps echoed gently across worn marble stones, each step slow, steady, unhurried. His lantern painted warm circles of light across forgotten doorways, weathered columns, and quiet arches. Every shadow held another story, every corner another memory. ... Above him, the moon had begun its slow descent. The stars still filled the sky, but the darkness no longer felt endless. Far beyond the eastern hills, the smallest hint of morning waited patiently, not yet visible, but coming, as it always had, as it always would. Marcus knew his watch was slowly nearing its end. Soon, the bakers would awaken, the fountains would be surrounded by smiling children, merchants would unlock their wooden stalls, the city would breathe with life once again. But for now, Rome still slept, peacefully, safely, wrapped beneath a blanket of moonlight, history, and quiet dreams. Marcus took one more slow breath, looked toward the silent rooftops, and continued deeper into the eternal city, where one final stretch of the night still waited to tell its story. Marcus remained where he was for just a little longer. The temple was beginning to change, not because the stones had moved or the statues had spoken, but because the light itself had become different. The moon still lingered above the western hills, yet its silver glow was slowly giving way to the gentle colors of a new morning. Marcus looked toward the eastern sky, soft shades of blue mixed with pale lavender. Then, a hint of gold appeared along the horizon. Not bright, not sudden, just enough to remind the world that another day was quietly on its way. The flame inside his lantern grew less important with every passing moment. For hours, it had been his companion. Its warm light had guided him through silent streets, hidden courtyards, forgotten temples, and peaceful gardens. Now, the sun was preparing to take its place. Marcus smiled softly. Another night had come to an end. Another peaceful watch had been completed. And somewhere beyond the quiet rooftops, the first citizens of Rome would soon awaken, never knowing how peacefully their ancient city had slept beneath the stars. Rome awakens. One breath at a time, Marcus slowed his steps, even more than before. There was no destination, no urgent message to deliver, no danger waiting around the next corner, only the quiet promise of a new morning. The streets were beginning to change, not with noise, not with crowds, but with light. Very slowly, the darkness released its gentle hold upon the city. The marble beneath his feet no longer reflected, only the silver moon. Now, soft shades of blue began to appear, as though the stones themselves were waking after a long, peaceful sleep. Marcus paused beside an ancient staircase. Its edges had been worn smooth by thousands of footsteps. Children, merchants, soldiers, senators, travelers, and ordinary families had climbed these very steps for generations, each leaving behind nothing more than quiet memories. He rested one hand against the cool stone. It felt familiar, solid, patient. The city had changed rulers. It had survived wars. It had celebrated victories. It had mourned losses. Yet these stones remained, watching silently through every season. A gentle breeze passed through the narrow street. It carried the scent of fresh olive leaves, damp earth, and distant flowers. Marcus closed his eyes for only a moment. The air felt clean, peaceful, almost timeless. Far away, a single bird began to sing. Just one. Its quiet call echoed softly between marble walls. Then, silence returned. Not empty silence, comforting silence, the kind that exists only before sunrise. Marcus continued walking. His lantern still glowed warmly, but its flame seemed smaller now. The eastern sky was growing brighter with every passing minute. Soon, the lantern would no longer be needed. Yet he carried it with the same care, because it had guided him through the entire night. He entered another peaceful square. At its center stood an ancient fountain. Its water flowed just as it had the evening before, just as it had, perhaps, for hundreds of years. The city changed, people changed, Generations came and went, but the fountain continued its quiet song, day after day, night after night. ... Marcus listened. The flowing water mixed gently with the morning breeze. Somewhere nearby, leaves whispered softly. A dove fluttered from one rooftop to another. Nothing hurried. Nothing demanded attention. Everything moved at its own peaceful rhythm. The rooftops began catching the first rays of golden sunlight. The highest temple glowed first. Then the marble columns. Then the quiet streets below. Light slowly descended across the eternal city, like a gentle blanket, warming every stone. Marcus smiled. His night had almost ended. Soon, shopkeepers would unlock their wooden doors. Bakers would fill the streets with the comforting scent of fresh bread. Children would laugh in these same squares. Merchants would begin another day's work. The city would awaken without ever knowing how peaceful its dreams had been. Marcus turned once more toward the rising sun. Behind him, the last shadows of the night quietly disappeared. Ahead, a new day waited patiently, and with one final, slow step, he continued forward, not as a hero, not as an emperor, but as the quiet guardian who had watched over the eternal city while all of Rome peacefully slept. Marcus remained still, watching as the sunlight slowly spread across the city. The rooftops glowed with soft gold. The marble columns seemed warmer now. Even the ancient statues appeared different under the gentle light of a new day. The night had hidden many things. The morning revealed them without hurry, without noise. A cool breeze passed quietly through the forum. It carried the fresh scent of olive leaves and damp stone. Marcus breathed deeply. This was his favorite moment. Not the darkness, not the daylight, but the peaceful space between them. Far away, another bird joined the morning chorus. Then another. Soon, the silence was no longer empty. It had become the quiet music of a city slowly awakening. A baker opened a wooden shutter. The sound was gentle, almost lost within the morning air. Nearby, a small cloud of smoke rose from a chimney. Breakfast was beginning. Another ordinary day for the people of Rome. Marcus smiled quietly. Most would never know how peaceful their city had been. Only moments before, they would see busy streets, crowded markets, and voices echoing through the squares. But he had witnessed the Rome that very few people ever experienced. The Rome that belonged to moonlight, mist, and silence. He adjusted his crimson cloak, lifted his lantern once more, and with calm, steady steps, he continued forward, ready to greet the first moments of a brand new day in the eternal city. Marcus continued walking without making a sound. The lantern still hung gently from his hand, its small flame glowing softly against the growing light of morning. It was no longer needed to guide his way, yet he carried it with quiet respect. For the entire night, it had been his faithful companion, illuminating forgotten streets, silent temples, hidden courtyards, and peaceful gardens, while the eternal city slept beneath the stars. The darkness was slowly giving way to dawn. Soft golden light slipped between marble rooftops and ancient columns, touching the city one gentle ray at a time. There was no sudden transformation. Rome awakened patiently, as though the city itself wished to savor these final peaceful moments before another busy day began. A cool morning breeze carried the scent of olive trees, damp stone, and fresh earth through the quiet streets. As Marcus passed an old olive tree, he noticed tiny drops of dew resting upon its silver-green leaves. Each droplet reflected the first light of sunrise like a tiny jewel. A gentle breeze stirred the branches, and one by one the droplets fell quietly onto the worn marble below. The sound was almost impossible to hear, yet it reminded him that even the smallest moments could make the morning feel alive. Nearby, an ancient stone fountain continued its endless song. Crystal clear water flowed steadily from carved lion head spouts into a circular marble basin, just as it had for generations. The fountain never hurried. It simply flowed, day after day, season after season, serving the people of Rome without asking for recognition. Marcus paused for a moment, listening to the gentle rhythm of the water, finding comfort in its quiet constancy. He smiled softly. Perhaps there was wisdom in simple things. Not every act of service was remembered. Not every faithful duty appeared in the pages of history. Yet those quiet acts often became the invisible foundation upon which great cities endured. As the final stars slowly disappeared from the brightening sky, Marcus knew his own watch was ending. He adjusted his crimson cloak, took one calm breath, and continued walking through the eternal city, grateful to have witnessed another peaceful night become another beautiful Roman morning. Marcus slowed his pace as the warmth of the rising sun gently reached the ancient marble beneath his feet. The city was no longer completely asleep, yet it had not fully awakened either. It existed in that quiet space between night and day, where every sound seemed softer and every breath of wind carried a sense of calm. From a distant rooftop came the gentle flutter of doves preparing for the morning, while the faint aroma of fresh bread drifted through the cool air from a nearby bakery. Marcus looked across the peaceful streets one final time. Soon they would be filled with merchants, travelers, children, and voices from every corner of the empire. But for these last precious moments, Rome still belonged to silence, and to those fortunate enough to witness its quiet beauty before the world awoke. Marcus stood before the ancient doorway for a long moment. He did not enter. Some places were meant to remain undisturbed. Not every mystery needed an answer. Not every forgotten path needed to be explored. For centuries, this quiet corner of Rome had rested in silence, keeping its stories hidden beneath layers of stone and time. Marcus simply bowed his head in quiet respect. Then he turned away. His footsteps echoed softly before fading into the distance. Soon, even those sounds disappeared. The city was awake now. Its people would fill the streets. Life would continue, just as it always had. But somewhere beneath the eternal city, silent halls, forgotten chambers, and ancient memories would continue to wait, patiently, without asking to be found. And perhaps that is where the greatest beauty of history truly lives. Not only in the stories we know, but also in the stories that remain untold. As the morning sun climbed higher above Rome, Marcus disappeared into the growing light, his long night finally complete. And now, dear traveler, it is time for your own journey to become quiet. Allow your thoughts to slow. Let your breathing become gentle. Leave the busy world behind and drift peacefully into the same calm silence that once embraced the eternal city of ancient Rome. Sleep well and let history keep watch until morning. For a few more moments, the city seemed to hold a quiet breath. The morning had arrived, yet the memory of the night had not completely faded. The cool air still lingered between the ancient columns. Tiny shadows rested beneath the arches, where moonlight had only recently disappeared. Marcus did not look back. He had walked these streets countless times before. He knew that every sunrise would bring another chapter to the eternal city, and every sunset would gently close it again. This endless rhythm had continued for generations, long before his footsteps, long before the great emperors, long before the marble temples had weathered beneath the passing centuries. The stones remembered, the fountains remembered, the quiet olive trees remembered. Even the gentle breeze seemed to carry echoes of forgotten voices, not voices of sorrow, not voices of triumph, simply the ordinary lives of ordinary Romans who had once walked these very streets. Perhaps that is the true wonder of history. It is not only found in great battles or magnificent monuments. Sometimes it lives within a single footprint, upon an ancient road, within the sound of flowing water, within the silence between one sunrise and the next. Marcus smiled softly as the warmth of the new day rested upon his shoulders. His watch was over. The city was safe, and somewhere, deep within the heart of Rome, another quiet night was already waiting for its turn to return. As the first light of morning slowly embraced the eternal city, Marcus finally allowed himself to rest. His duty had ended, but the story of Rome never truly ended. Every sunrise marked the beginning of another ordinary day, while every sunset quietly prepared the city for another peaceful night. That endless rhythm had continued for centuries, carried forward by countless generations who never imagined that one day their footsteps would become history. Rome was never built in a single morning. It grew one stone at a time, one family at a time, one dream at a time. Behind every great temple stood the hands of skilled craftsmen. Behind every marble road were workers whose names have long been forgotten. Behind every magnificent monument lived ordinary people who simply wished for a peaceful life. History often remembers emperors. It remembers victories. It remembers great battles. Yet the quiet lives of ordinary people are just as important. The baker who rose before sunrise, the gardener who cared for the olive trees, the stonemason who repaired a weathered column. the mother who prepared breakfast while the city slowly awakened, the child who laughed in a marble courtyard. These lives rarely appeared in history books, but together, they became Rome. Perhaps that is one of history's greatest lessons. Great civilizations are not built only by famous rulers. They are built by thousands of quiet people, performing small acts, every single day. Marcus understood this better than anyone. No one would celebrate his long nights of walking empty streets. No monument would ever be raised in his honor. Yet every peaceful sunrise reminded him that quiet duty also carried great value. Sometimes, the greatest service is the one that no one notices. The morning breeze continued to move gently through the city. Fountains flowed exactly as they always had. Birds welcomed another day with simple songs. Life returned. Slowly, naturally, without hurry. The same rhythm had greeted Romans for generations, and in many ways, it still reminds us today that every new morning is a quiet gift. Perhaps that is why ancient places feel so peaceful. The stones no longer speak with voices, yet they still tell stories, not through words, but through silence. If we listen patiently, that silence can become its own kind of history. It reminds us that time moves forward for everyone. Empires rise, empires fade, buildings are repaired, roads are rebuilt, names are remembered, and eventually forgotten. But the simple beauty of a peaceful sunrise never truly changes. Marcus took one final look toward the city he had protected throughout the night. He smiled, not because he expected thanks, but because another quiet watch had come to its perfect end. And as the warm light of morning spread across the marble streets, he disappeared into the awakening city, leaving behind nothing except peace. Perhaps that is the most beautiful ending any guardian could ever hope for. The morning light continued to spread across the eternal city with remarkable patience. It did not rush through the streets or suddenly brighten the rooftops. Instead, it touched every ancient stone one by one, as though greeting an old friend that had faithfully waited through another quiet night. The marble temples reflected a gentle golden glow, while the narrow streets slowly emerged from the last traces of darkness. Rome had awakened countless times before, and yet every sunrise carried the feeling of a new beginning. Marcus walked without urgency. His duty was complete, but he lingered for a while, appreciating the peaceful hours that existed before the city became busy. He had learned that these quiet moments often disappeared unnoticed. Most people would soon become occupied with their work, their families, and the countless responsibilities of daily life. Few would pause to admire the soft light resting upon an ancient column, or listen to the peaceful sound of water flowing through a marble fountain. Perhaps that is why history feels so comforting. It reminds us that life has always moved in gentle cycles. Morning follows night. Spring follows winter. One generation quietly gives way to the next. Even the greatest empires cannot stop the steady passage of time. Yet within that endless movement, there is also a quiet beauty. Every sunrise offers another opportunity to begin again, just as it did for the people who once called Rome their home. Marcus often wondered how many others had stood exactly where he stood now. Perhaps another watchman had watched this same sunrise 100 years earlier. Perhaps a young scholar had paused here before beginning his studies. Perhaps an old merchant had taken one last peaceful walk before opening his shop for another day. Their names may have faded from memory, but their lives had become part of the city itself. Every ordinary moment they lived added another invisible thread to the long story of Rome. The great monuments still stood proudly above the streets. But Marcus knew that the true strength of the city had never been found only in its marble walls or magnificent temples. It lived within its people, within the craftsmen who shaped each stone with patient hands, within the farmers who brought food from the countryside, within the teachers who passed knowledge to the next generation, within every family that gathered together at the end of the day, grateful for another peaceful evening beneath the Roman sky. As the sun climbed a little higher, the warmth of its light replaced the cool air of the night. The lantern Marcus had carried for so many hours had served its purpose well. He gently lowered it, knowing that the light of a new day was now enough to guide his path. Without a single word, he offered one final glance toward the city before continuing onward, leaving the eternal city to begin another ordinary day, one that, like so many before it, would quietly become another page in the endless story of history. There is something remarkable about ancient cities, not because they are old, but because they remind us that every generation believes its own moment is permanent. The people of Rome surely believed that tomorrow would arrive much like today. They walked familiar streets. They greeted familiar faces. They worried about ordinary things. They celebrated small victories. They hoped for peaceful tomorrows. In many ways, they were not so different from us. History often feels distant because we see only ruins, broken columns, weathered statues. Empty temples, yet those stones were once surrounded by laughter. Children raced across these same courtyards. Friends shared conversations beneath the shade of olive trees. Neighbors exchanged greetings as they carried baskets through the marketplace. Someone paused to admire the sunrise. Someone else hurried home before sunset. Life unfolded quietly, one ordinary day after another. Perhaps that is the greatest illusion of time. We imagine history as a collection of extraordinary moments. But history is mostly made of ordinary mornings, ordinary evenings, simple meals shared with family, the comfort of familiar voices, the sound of footsteps returning home. Marcus understood this better than anyone. During his long nights, he watched the city while everyone else slept. He witnessed the peaceful hours that few people ever experienced. He saw the stars slowly disappear. He watched the moon cross the sky. He welcomed the first birds of morning. These moments would never be recorded by historians. No poet would write about them. No emperor would celebrate them. Yet they remained beautiful, simply because they existed. Perhaps the greatest treasures of life are often the quietest ones. A gentle breeze moving through ancient trees. The soft echo of water flowing through a fountain. The warm glow of sunrise resting upon old marble. These simple gifts ask for nothing. They simply invite us to slow down, to breathe, and to remember that peace has always been part of the human story. As another day began in Rome, Marcus quietly disappeared into the waking city. Someone else would eventually continue his watch. The fountains would continue to flow. The seasons would continue to change. Generations would come and go. And the eternal city, patiently, silently, would continue telling its story to anyone willing to pause and listen. As the hours passed, the city settled into the quiet rhythm that had guided Rome for centuries. The busy streets would soon fill with voices, but somewhere beyond the noise, the ancient heart of the eternal city remained unchanged. Time moved forward, yet it also seemed to circle back upon itself, reminding every generation that nothing truly lasts forever, and yet some things never completely disappear. If we could walk through Rome as it once was, we might be surprised by how ordinary it felt. There would be no music announcing the arrival of history, no great voice reminding us that we were witnessing a civilization that would one day be remembered around the world. We would simply see people living their lives, a father teaching his son a trade, a mother preparing the evening meal, a potter shaping clay with careful hands, a farmer returning from the countryside before sunset. The greatest empire of its age was, in many ways, built upon countless ordinary days that seemed unremarkable to the people living them. That is one of history's quiet lessons. The moments that shape the future are often the moments that seem the smallest. A kind word offered to a neighbor, a stone carefully placed by a patient builder, a teacher sharing knowledge with a curious student, a watchman faithfully walking his nightly path, never expecting anyone to remember his name. These simple acts become the invisible threads that hold a civilization together. Marcus had never considered himself extraordinary. He simply fulfilled the duty placed before him. Night after night, season after season, he carried his lantern through streets that most citizens never saw beneath the stars. He protected homes belonging to people who would never know he had passed their doors before dawn. Yet there was a quiet dignity in such work, not because it brought recognition, but because it brought peace. Perhaps every generation has its own unseen guardians. Some protect cities, some protect families. Others preserve knowledge, traditions, or simple acts of kindness that quietly pass from one generation to the next. Their names may never appear in books, yet without them, the story of history would be incomplete. As the sun climbed higher above Rome, the shadows grew shorter across the marble streets. The fountains continued to sing their endless song, just as they had through countless summers and winters. The olive trees swayed gently in the breeze, their roots reaching deep into the same soil that had supported generations long forgotten. Nature, like history, moved with quiet patience, never rushing, never stopping. It is easy to think of the past as something distant, yet the hopes of those who lived long ago remain familiar even today. They wished for peaceful homes, healthy children, trusted friends, meaningful work, and another sunrise to greet. Across 2,000 years, those quiet hopes have changed very little. The faces are different, the language is different, but the human heart still searches for the same gentle comforts. Perhaps that is why ancient places continue to speak to us. They remind us that we are part of a story much larger than ourselves. Long before we arrived, others walked their own paths with courage and uncertainty. Long after we are gone, others will continue walking theirs. Time connects us all, not by making us identical, but by allowing each generation to leave a small mark upon the world before quietly passing the story to those who follow. Marcus understood this without ever speaking it aloud. As he looked across the city one final time, he felt neither pride nor sadness. Only gratitude. Gratitude for another peaceful night. Gratitude for the quiet streets that had trusted his watch. Gratitude for the simple privilege of witnessing Rome at its calmest, when moonlight, silence, and history existed together in perfect harmony. And perhaps, as our own journey through the eternal city comes gently toward its close, we can carry that same feeling with us. We can remember that life does not need to be hurried to be meaningful. We do not need every day to become extraordinary. Sometimes the greatest gift is simply to notice the beauty already around us. The warmth of morning light, the sound of birds greeting a new day, the comfort of familiar places, and the quiet peace found in moments when the world seems to slow down. The Roman people understood this in ways they may never have spoken aloud. Their world was filled with uncertainty, just as every generation's world has been. Harvests could fail. Storms could arrive without warning. Empires could change. Leaders could come and go. Yet morning always returned. The sun continued to rise above the hills, reminding everyone that life moved forward with quiet determination. Perhaps this endless rhythm is the greatest teacher of all. It reminds us that difficult days eventually pass. Busy seasons become distant memories. Worries that once seemed overwhelming slowly lose their weight as time carries them gently away. Just as the moon gives way to sunrise, every chapter of life quietly makes room for another. Imagine, for a moment, standing upon one of Rome's ancient hills as the city awakens below. The rooftops catch the first golden light. The fountains sparkle beneath the morning sun. A gentle breeze moves through the cypress and olive trees, while distant bells and quiet voices begin to drift through the streets. There is no rush, no urgency, only the steady unfolding of another peaceful day. It is easy to think that history belongs only to the past, but perhaps history is simply the present, waiting to become memory. Every conversation we have, every kindness we offer, every quiet moment we spend appreciating the world around us will one day become part of a story that continues long after we are gone. In that way, we are all quietly adding our own pages to the endless book of time. Marcus never sought recognition. He never expected statues to be carved in his honor, or poems to celebrate his faithful walks through the sleeping city. His reward was something much quieter. He had witnessed Rome in its most peaceful hours, when the world seemed to breathe more slowly and every street whispered the memories of those who had walked there before. And now, as our own journey gently reaches its final pages, allow yourself to carry a little of that ancient peace with you. Let your breathing become calm and steady. Let your thoughts drift as lightly as the morning breeze moving through the olive branches. Imagine the soft glow of sunrise resting upon marble temples, the endless song of flowing fountains, and the timeless silence that still lives within the heart of the eternal city. Thank you for joining this quiet walk through ancient Rome. May the stories of the past remind you that even the smallest moments can hold great beauty. May you find comfort in slow mornings, peaceful evenings, and the gentle rhythm of time itself. And whenever you hear the whisper of wind, the sound of flowing water, or the quiet stillness before sunrise, perhaps you will remember Marcus, the humble watchman who asked for nothing, expected nothing, and simply walked beneath the stars so that an ancient city could sleep in peace. The story of Marcus ends here, but the story of Rome never truly ends. Long after one watchman finishes his final walk, another begins. Long after one generation fades into memory, another opens its eyes beneath the same morning sky. This is the quiet rhythm that has carried the eternal city across thousands of years. Empires have risen. Empires have fallen. Marble has weathered beneath countless seasons. Yet time continues its gentle journey, never asking permission, never pausing for anyone. Perhaps somewhere, in another forgotten century, another traveler stood where Marcus once stood. He may have watched the first rays of sunlight touch the temples. He may have listened to the gentle sound of water flowing through the city's fountains. He may have wondered about those who had walked these streets before him, just as we quietly wonder about him today. History has a remarkable way of connecting people who never meet, allowing their stories to cross the centuries in silence. When we think about ancient Rome, our minds often turn to great emperors, victorious armies, magnificent monuments, and famous speeches. Those stories deserve to be remembered, but they are only part of a much larger picture. Behind every emperor stood thousands of ordinary citizens. Behind every monument stood skilled builders. Behind every triumph stood families who simply hoped to live another peaceful day. The true heartbeat of Rome was never found only in its palaces. It lived within its people. Imagine the countless evenings that quietly settled over the city. Families gathered around simple meals. Oil lamps flickered gently inside modest homes. Children slowly drifted to sleep while parents spoke softly about the day that had passed. Outside, the streets became still, and somewhere in the distance, a faithful watchman began another peaceful patrol. These ordinary evenings happened thousands upon thousands of times, yet together they created the life of one of history's greatest civilizations. Even after the sun had climbed above the rooftops of Rome, there were still places where silence remained untouched. Hidden courtyards rested peacefully behind weathered stone walls. Quiet gardens welcomed the gentle morning breeze. Ancient olive trees cast long shadows across worn marble paths, just as they had done for generations beyond counting. It is easy to imagine history as a collection of extraordinary events, great victories, powerful rulers, magnificent monuments. Yet the true soul of Rome was often found far away from the grand stages of history. It lived within the quiet corners of the city, where ordinary people greeted one another with simple kindness, where families gathered at the end of each day, and where neighbors shared stories that would never be written into any scroll. Marcus had spent many years walking through these peaceful streets. During the long hours of the night, he came to understand something that few others noticed. Every building seemed to have its own memory. Every fountain carried its own quiet rhythm. Every narrow alley held echoes of footsteps that had faded long before his own. Though he could not hear the voices of the past, he often felt as though the city itself remembered them. The passing of time is a curious thing. It changes every face, every season, and every generation. Yet it also leaves behind small traces that quietly endure. A smooth stone step worn by countless feet. A weathered doorway polished by hands opening it every morning. An old tree whose roots have reached deeper into the earth with every passing year. These simple details become silent witnesses to history, preserving stories that no written record could ever fully capture. Perhaps that is why ancient places invite us to slow down. They remind us that life has never been only about reaching the next destination. There is quiet beauty in walking without hurry, in listening without distraction, and in allowing a peaceful moment to unfold at its own gentle pace. As another day continued across Rome, the city slowly filled with life. Merchants opened their wooden shutters. Craftsmen prepared their tools with practiced hands. Bakers placed fresh loaves upon warm stone shelves. Children laughed as they crossed familiar courtyards, unaware that centuries later their city would still inspire the imagination of people living in distant lands. Marcus watched these simple moments with quiet gratitude. He knew that greatness was not measured only by emperors or armies. It was measured by ordinary people choosing, day after day, to build, to care, to teach, to protect, and to hope. Those quiet acts became the foundation upon which every great civilization stood. As the morning breeze drifted through the streets once more, Marcus took one final slow breath. The scent of olive leaves, fresh bread, damp stone, and flowing water blended together into a memory he would carry for the rest of his life. It was not the memory of a great battle or a royal ceremony. It was simply the memory of peace, and perhaps that is the greatest gift history can offer us. Not only the stories of those who changed the world, but also the gentle reminder that even the quietest moments possess their own lasting beauty. Every sunrise becomes a memory. Every peaceful evening becomes part of a larger story. Every ordinary day quietly joins the endless river of time, flowing onward through the centuries. So as our journey continues, allow your thoughts to become lighter. Let the noise of the present drift gently away. Imagine yourself walking beside ancient marble walls beneath a calm Roman sky, where the only sounds are a distant fountain, the rustling of olive branches, and the soft footsteps of a watchman who asks for nothing except the privilege of protecting a sleeping city. The Eternal City has always welcomed those who arrive with patience. It asks only that we slow our pace, open our imagination, and listen carefully. For in its silence, Rome still has many stories left to tell.